Hello everybody, this is Rec 250. This is Lesson 2 for June 3rd, Lesson 2 Part 1. Lesson 2 Part 1, Rec 250. So to review, we were talking about a couple different things, the intro to the class, and then discussed how everybody has their own unique personality. They need to be comfortable with that personality or comfortable in their own skin to be an effective leader. Then we talked about the other component or the other piece of you, kind of the character piece, that interpersonal skill piece that you develop. And so you develop these interpersonal skills so that you can become an effective leader. And this class is going to explore how do you develop those interpersonal skills, what are they, and then what are the ethical boundaries to use those interpersonal skills within. And we talked about several things. One thing I do want to remind you, the three leadership roles: guide, instructor, facilitator. Guide, we talked about that, and an instructor, we talked about that. Facilitator is what we're going to focus on. A facilitator is really probably the most difficult part, or the part that requires the most interpersonal skills, because you need to be able to effectively communicate, read your group, know where they're at, be able to empathize and listen, as well as be stern and firm on rules and guidelines. And you're bringing that group, or small group, large group, whatever, from point A to point B. It's a learning process. They start out, maybe they don't know each other, and after 8 hours, something great has happened. They've bonded. They've maybe gone through the group formation or the group formation of stages, learned the learning process a few different times, and they're doing better. Maybe they're doing worse. Okay. For some of you who may be confused by the word facilitator, try to think of it almost as a leader with some counseling skills. Is the leader that is more than just, hey, come on, follow me, we're going to go do this. That would be the guide role. Or the leader that simply says, okay, this is how you do it, step by step. This is how you change the flat on your bike. Step by step. That'd be instructor. The facilitator is, I'm creating an environment, a positive environment, where my group can learn and grow. And there'll be times I'm really involved, there'll be times I'm not as involved. And so it takes these strong interpersonal skills that are very similar to the counseling field, or the skills you would develop as a counselor. Okay, so keep that in mind as we move forward. So here's some reading for you. I'm going to have you skip forward in the book. And for this lesson 2 here, you can start, it's on page 244 or chapter 18. Page 244, chapter 18 is Flexible Leadership Style. And in this chapter, it's a short chapter of about 6 pages or so. It discusses probably the 3 primary leadership styles. And this is very important. You will have tests. You will have questions on the test about this chapter, so make sure you read through it and think about, where am I? As in one of the last videos, I challenged you to think about what would be your greatest fear, or your biggest concern about being in front of a group and working with a group. This chapter here, when you read this, go, who am I? Where am I on this scale? What kind of leadership style do I naturally possess that coincides with my personality? And realize that I can actually be in every one of these leadership styles as I develop my interpersonal skills. But I will have my favorite. I will have the one that is closest to my personality and makes me feel the best or the most comfortable. Because you want to lead within your own skin, be comfortable in your own skin, lead within your comfort zone. Okay, so moving on. There's some reading there, and then I've got some more reading for you. Hold on a minute as I move back in the book. The other reading that I have for you for lesson 2 is going to be in chapter 3, I believe. Yep, chapter 3. This is the history of adventure programming, and again, we're looking at adventure programming because, in my opinion, it is an excellent medium to test and develop interpersonal leadership skills. If all I did was talk about coaching, or if all I did was talk about classroom leadership, or all I did was talk about seminar-based leadership, I think that we would miss out in understanding the power of environment and the power of group dynamics. If we're just, if I'm just talking about being a teacher, most of the time I'm in an instructor role. Okay, now I said most of the time. It's not all the time, right? But the adventure environment poses this lush atmosphere environment that we can look at, and it also poses very clearly group development and group development theory, group development stages, etc. So that's why we're looking at the adventure field, and it's going to have a lot of good concepts, and a lot of good ideas and things that you can put into your leadership toolkit and take with you for whatever you'll be doing in the future. Okay, so chapter 3. This will be page 28. Okay, page 28 through page, basically the end of 30, 31. Okay, so just a couple pages here. And what this is the history of Outward Bound. This is one of the most prominent leadership-based adventure programs that started here, or didn't start here, but is very prominent here in the United States. So please read about that. We may go over that in the notes. I may have time, may not. So please read that as well. So chapter 18, I think it was, and then page 28 through 31, or the history of Outward Bound, in chapter 3, history of adventure programming. Okay, so take a look at that for your reading. Okay, here we go. So going back to develop our interpersonal skills, to look at becoming a good facilitator and moving to the place where we believe we're very effective within our skill set, because it's a growth process. You're not going to be a perfect leader after this class or after a couple of years. This is a lifelong learning, lifetime development. So we do have to be okay with where we're at, yet challenge ourselves to be better leaders. And so what we'll do now for this class is we're going to look at some historical elements, and these historical elements will, I believe, solidify the facilitator role, or why we should develop our interpersonal skills and be good facilitators. Because people that are being led by you, okay, are looking for these particular concepts, which we'll be talking about in the next few lessons. So keep an eye out for those, and here's what we're going to do. If you can turn in your note packet, this is going to be note packet part 1, in your note packet part 1 to page 2. So note packet part 1, page 2. So we're going to look at some theory here, some historical theory as well as some current theory about the adventure environment, where you see many facilitators with strong interpersonal skills currently working, having fulfilling careers. And so here's what I'm going to look at. Is on page 2, if you look at the top, it says learning by doing, or learning by doing often requires problem solving, an inquiry of the learner, and it is an active rather than a passive process. It is predicated on the belief that change and growth occurs when people are placed outside positions of comfort. Now, this is a definition you're going to get to know, and you will see it on the test on the top of page 2 in your note packet. Learning by doing with reflection. Learning by doing with reflection. So the idea here is when you do something, you have an experience, okay, then you reflect on that experience, learning happens, okay, and that reflection piece is where the leader comes in. For example, so you have a group and they're participating in some activities and they're learning to work together, and they're participating in in these activities, and maybe they succeed, maybe they fail, no big deal. If you don't take time to reflect, or for them to reflect on, how was my particular behavior during those activities? How was the behavior of the group as a whole during those activities? And if you don't take a reasonable time, a reasonable look at what your behavior was, how you interacted, and what you did during those activities, then you can make the argument that it's not as meaningful. You just did some activities and you went home. That was it. Whereas if you do some activities, then you sit and think about them for a while, discuss them, reflect on them, then you're having a more meaningful experience. And when you have a more meaningful experience, people learn and they grow. And when they grow, they personally grow in that character realm that we've been talking about. Their personality doesn't change. They could still be the goofy person, they'll still be the outgoing person, still be the introverted person, but the character part begins to change, begins to grow, and we can make the case that life is better because of it. Life is better because of your resiliency. Okay, your ability to problem solve, your ability to take life's punches, make the best out of them, as opposed to whine and complain and have issues. So this personal responsibility, resiliency, and self-confidence. So learning by doing with reflection. Now, reflection piece is where the facilitator or the leader comes in. It's very hard for most people to self-reflect, to sit down after an experience with a group and say, gosh, how was my behavior? Was it negative? Was it, what can I change here? There needs to be someone there to facilitate that process, to facilitate the reflection process. And so that's where you come in. So say you're working with a group, you run them through a few activities, and after those activities you have a debriefing session where you reflect and say, okay, how were you working together? Were we good? Were we bad? Did we succeed? Did we fail? What did we do? You open up for discussion, for comments, for reflection. The next thing you know, people are beginning to process, oh, maybe I need to do this better. Maybe as a group we need to do this better. Or maybe we didn't do this very well, so we're going to make this goal and change this or that or whatever. But they wouldn't think about that if it wasn't for you. The leader's ability, the leader's input to run a reflective discussion, debriefing-based session. Okay. So looking back on page 2, the next paragraph says encouraging individuals to push their perceived limitations and positions of comfort through adventure and experiential activities. Experiential activities are activities that you have an experience with. Okay, there's something where you're going to go through the activity with the group and you're going to work together, and there's going to be maybe some success, maybe some failure, some communication, etc. This gives us the product of adventure education, which is, or the adventure programming, which is personal growth and development. So in this second paragraph here, what it's saying is that the whole mission of adventure programming is personal growth and development. Is literally the development of leaders. Okay, now you might be the leader in that particular program. Okay, but you're developing leaders. That's what a facilitator does. A facilitator empowers and develops the group, or helps them develop the group, so that those people become better. And when they become more self-confident, more resilient, have a better ability to problem solve, then they become more effective leaders. Okay, so personal growth and development. That's the whole goal of adventure education or adventure programming. Awesome. So backpacking, river rafting, challenge course, all these great mediums within adventure education is designed for personal growth and development of the individuals participating. And if you're a leader in that, what a great place to be. What a great environment to work in. So with these two, learning by doing with reflection, okay, and the whole adventure philosophy is to push the comfort zone, to get people out of their norm, to do something different. And see, that creates this dynamic environment, which we'll talk a lot about in this class. This really, really dynamic environment that you can see a lot of people push through their preconceived limitations. The only limits that people have are the limits that they put on themselves. I'll see you for part 2.